All right, welcome to Slammed, a Boston Celtics podcast brought to you by Odyssey. I'm Meghan Ottolini from WEEI, joined by Esteban Bustillos from GBH and Justin Turpin from WEEI. So we are coming off of one of the crazier weeks. I guess we're still in one of the crazier weeks in Boston sports in recent memory. So bear with us because we're all a little scatterbrained from the fallout of Bill Belichick departing the New England Patriots yesterday, and then Gerard Mayo apparently being hired today. But we're here to talk about the Celtics. So thank you for joining us, everybody. And what a day to talk about the Celtics, because they're coming off of a 135-102 loss to the Milwaukee Bucks, and it's not even as good as that sounds.
No.
I want to set this up for you guys. So the Celtics overall have been doing excellent on these second nights of these back-to-backs. It's one of the hallmarks of their game, I think, so far this season, who they are as a team. And what we're really looking at with this week in Celtics basketball is what I thought was the best game of the season in that overtime win against the Minnesota Timberwolves. And then maybe the worst loss of the season, at least if you just look at it statistically, and the fact that it was so bad that TNT had to turn you off in the third quarter because the product was no longer presentable to a national audience. And we'll get into the reasons for that, because I think there's a lot of buts there. But first of all, what game do you think holds more value when we're trying to evaluate this team?
I mean, I think I'd lean towards Minnesota, just because of the nature of that game, the competitiveness in it. Although, I mean, losing to maybe your biggest rival outside of Philadelphia right now, in such it wasn't even a game. I mean, you could sort of see from the beginning, they were like something just wasn't there. So I want to say Minnesota, but it's mostly just because they showed up that game, you know.
So I'll say this, and then I'll get to you, Turp, really quick. I just want to set the stage for what happened with the game last night against Milwaukee, in case people, for whatever reason, were not aware of all the buts around the situation, which was 4 of your 5 starters played 40 minutes plus in that overtime game against Minnesota at home the night before. Hop on a plane. Even when you're an NBA player, you're still, and you're flying like an NBA player, you're still getting on a flight to Milwaukee, and then playing the next night at 7:30. And so I kind of get why your legs might be shot, why you might be exhausted. But at the same time, I look at that and I go, so why are you on the floor? You know, why aren't you doing some form of load management? To me, like, if you're on the floor, you should be looking to compete. And it looked like pretty early Joe Mazzulla realized that they didn't have any real compete in them, and that the guys were so worn out that he spun it to, hey, we're going to go into rest mode and take care of the players. And this is what he said after the game, very much in Bill Belichick fashion. He said that he was doing what was best for the team.
It's hard. Like you said, it was my decision. It wasn't theirs. They're going to always want to play. We do talk minutes, and, hey, do you want to stay in? But I think at the end of the day, I got to do the best thing possible. So, I guess I don't want to use the phrase throw in the towel. It's more about the perspective of your team and where your team is at, right? And you look at our team over the course of these, we played 38, 39 games. We've developed a toughness, a mindset. We've done a lot of great things on back-to-backs. We've done a lot of great things underhanded, and tonight just wasn't our night. And I think you have to have the humility to know that from time to time.
Yeah, when you trail by 37, when you lose by 37, obviously it's embarrassing, especially a team that everyone thinks you're going to be seeing in the Eastern Conference Finals. But like, the schedule makers did them no favors. Like, when you look at it, you play 5 games in 7 nights. You're in 3 cities in 4 days. They just did them no favors and felt like they never really had a shot. And I wonder if the reason they played had to do with the national televised games and the NBA kind of pushing guys to suit up during those games. Granted, Mazzulla, I think, could just say no and sit them out, but I wonder if there was some incentive there. But it feels like one of those scheduled losses, which sounds like such a cheap cop-out, but in reality, that's what this was. When you're, it's a tough ask for anybody, and no matter how talented you are. And like I said, it's bad to lose in that fashion, but that's a scheduled loss.
Yeah, it kind of feels like it would be a game like back in the day where like someone like Greg Popovich would pull out Tim Duncan and Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili. They'd be playing like the Lakers on a Friday night, and they wouldn't play, and he wouldn't care. Nowadays, obviously, the NBA frowns on that a lot more than they do. But I think Justin, you made a point last night on Twitter. Is like, even as bad as that was, like, to have all your starters be on the floor and just get wiped off that floor. I mean, that's not a good look.
It's inexcusable, especially that happened that quick. Second largest halftime deficit in franchise history. That's bad.
I mean,
sorry, go ahead, Esteban. No, I was just you go ahead.
All right. What is this? How much of a is this a red flag? Is it just, oh, this happens? How do y'all feel about it?
So I think it's more of an aberration than anything. And part of that is the way that they have been playing on back-to-backs, which is what we started out talking about, which is, they're 5-2 now, including this game, on the second nights of back-to-backs. And that's including having to split some time between Kristaps Porzingis, who I think they're very smartly trying to manage his minutes during the season and what he's doing and various ailments that he's just going to have because of the type of player he is. And also Al Horford, who just doesn't play back-to-backs anymore because of his pre-existing condition of age. And so I'm going to take it as more of an aberration than they lack fight or they're soft or anything like that. But what you bring up, Esteban, is so true. Like, this is supposed to be your rival in the East. And you have somebody, I feel bad for Drew Holiday, because Drew Holiday is talking ahead of time and talking to Ali LaForce, who was doing the game last night as a sideline reporter. And he's saying, like, well, yeah, he's in a better situation with Boston. And I think anybody who's looking at the game going in would say, yeah, he is in a better situation. He's with the best starting five in the entire league. Meanwhile, you look over at what was happening with Milwaukee. Milwaukee had lost 4 of 5 going into this game. I really do think it's more about the circumstances of what was going on around the game in terms of the Bucks having multiple nights off, being at home, and the Celtics coming in the way they were coming in. Like, there is a schedule aspect to that. It's just, I don't want to sound like,
you don't want to make excuses.
I don't want to sound like a sports radio caller, but there is an aspect to it that is like, what would Kevin Garnett do? And I just can't imagine Kevin Garnett and his teams saying, you know what, we're out here and we're playing, but we just don't have it tonight. Like, I didn't get enough sleep on the jet, I didn't get my regular nap in. My legs are tired, especially if he was 25 years old. When you're supposed to be in a championship season, it's just it's a bad look, and it's a bad look on national TV. And it's like, as much as people hated what Greg Popovich did with his championship Spurs teams, God, I would rather have seen them say, oh, Jason Tatum is managing his sprained ankle and Jaylen Brown has this going on. He's got, I don't know, a knee contusion or something. Then have them be out there and not a single starter make a 3-pointer in the time that they were out there. Like, and Damian Lillard just going off. It was just ugly.
Yeah, I think that it may have been the first quarter or the first half. I think their 3-point percentage was 6.7, which was just incredible. And to your point about Kevin Garnett, that also may have been sort of their downfall, is their insane overcompetitiveness, where when you go later into the end of that sort of iteration of the Celtics, the injuries just caught up to them. So it's it's a give and take situation, truly.
But those were older guys too.
Yeah,
You
no,
know,
it's true.
those
True.
were older guys. So if there's a time that you're going to push a little bit, now you got to be strategic about it. I'm not saying push Al Horford, push Kristaps Porzingis, but he didn't play the night before, so
Yeah,
you know, it's a different situation.
yeah. And just to, I know we're obviously this game was as bad as it gets, but how, given how really incredible the game just the night before against Minnesota, I mean, how did y'all feel what that sort of sets up the Celtics for the rest of this year?
So I thought that the game the night before, and I want to be clear on this, tells you way more about who the Celtics team is. I didn't like the way that last night's game went. I don't know how anybody following the Celtics would, but I thought my biggest takeaway, first of all, was such a statement from Jason Tatum in overtime. And I think that's going to be obviously huge that he can, you know, have late game surges and really take over in an overtime situation against the best team in the West is the kind of thing that you're going to need in a 7-game series if you're back in the finals, obviously. Like, for everything we talk about the starting five, if it's going to be Tatum going up against Jokic or going up against Towns and Edwards, you know, whoever you want it to be when you're looking out there, he's going to be the real difference maker. Even though you have X factors all over, he's going to be the one who determines what your performance is. The other thing is, and this is just because self-accountability, it's something I've been harping on, when the Celtics have been losing these third quarters coming out of halftime, oftentimes that leads to a total downfall. And they lost that third quarter. And then they managed to get it back in the fourth. And then Jason Tatum takes over. To me, that's a recipe for a lot of clutch success. So I think that that's something that we can see as, okay, when they're going up against an ultra competitive defense, one of the best defenses in the league, this is where they can show up. And that's a bigger takeaway to me than they were really tired and didn't want to play against Dame and, you know, got cut away from on TNT.
They also did it without Kristaps Porzingis. And everyone, especially in the clutch, has talked about how reliant they are in Porzingis in those moments now. And they did it without him. Jason Tatum rose to the occasion. Jaylen Brown defensively, which is, you know, he's made a point to put in work on that side of the ball. And he shut down Anthony Edwards in the fourth quarter and overtime. And then you have Derek White and Drew Holiday making big plays despite not necessarily shooting the ball well. Derek White draws that charge, channeling his inner Marcus Smart. Then he grabs that huge offensive rebound. Drew Holiday was 1 of 7 from 3 and knocks down that corner 3. It's just, that's how good this team is. They can beat you in so many different ways. And that was my big takeaway from Wednesday night against Minnesota.
Yeah, I think I saw a stat I hadn't seen before just a couple days ago that Holiday is shooting the highest percentage of any shooter from the corner 3 in the league right now.
Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty. Not necessarily a guy, obviously a good shooter, but not necessarily the first person you would think of on that list. But that 3 obviously clutch, and I mean, him just making that really just like essentially a strong safety, a free safety play where he snatches the ball out of midair, they take it down the court, get it to Tatum at the top of the key. That's as like the ideal of what you want from the Celtics, from this Celtics team, I think. But at the same time, you know, there's sort of the asterisk of, oh, they did it without Porzingis. Does the fact that Gobert wasn't playing for Minnesota, does that hurt? Not hurt, but does that change how you look at this game at all?
Maybe I'm being a bobo. It really doesn't. You know, I don't want to take away from Gobert as a defender, and that I haven't watched as much Minnesota basketball as I should, because like we talked about, I don't know if it was a week ago or 2 weeks ago with OKC, like they
don't show them.
Well, yeah, they do feel like they're under the radar, especially for us out here in Boston. But God, that defense is like, they make Boston look small. And so I can only imagine, and maybe part of that is not having Porzingis out there. I can only imagine what it would have been like to have Rudy out there. At the same time, like, I don't know. I don't know how much stock you put into what Vegas looks at, but the betting line only moved for the points average with Rudy out like 2 points up. So that kind of tells you how much they expected him to make an impact on the defense. I don't take away from the win with that because to me, Kristaps for Celtics is greater than Gobert for Minnesota. Even though their defense is what was, I think, killing the Celtics during most of the parts of the game when they were struggling.
And I mean, also they Mike Conley out for them. Not again, not as much as of a contributor as Gobert, but when you have Anthony Edwards out there, I you have a chance. So no, it was. I think again, you said this, Megan. I think probably the most exciting game of the year for the Celtics so far. So yeah, it's really a tale of two games where you have one of the best games they've played really during this sort of run, and then just completely just fall flat on their faces the next night, which is understandable.
It also took 38 games for them to fall flat on their face. They haven't been blown out once this year. Like the one game you might consider is Orlando on Black Friday, but that was close up until the third quarter when Orlando blew them out in those third quarters that Megan's been all over. You know, that's was the reason they lost that game. So this is really the first time that they've been blown out. And it took 38 games to happen, which I think means something.
Yeah, and it happens to almost every team at least once over the course of a season. So it makes sense. It also makes me feel a little better about myself because like if I ever have a bad day or maybe I'm just not on, and then I see, oh, this happens to Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown too. It's like, oh, I don't feel as bad about how I'm living my life. You know what I mean?
This is something that I think is definitely real now, and I wonder what you guys think about it. The 18-0 home court streak, which is historic start at home for the Celtics right now. You listen to the way that we don't have the sound, it doesn't matter, but basically Jason Tatum with Abby Chin from NBC Sports Boston after that win against the Timberwolves, it was one of the things that he highlighted, like they're not going to lose at home yet. I wonder what you guys make of it's starting to feel like a little bit of an imbalance about how they're attacking how they play at home versus on the road. And I'm not saying that they're not trying on the road, but it seems like they really, 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 really don't want to lose at home yet. Like this has become a thing for the team that they're focused on.
I also think it's like a sense of pride, right? Like when you look at the in-season tournament, like Brad Stevens said, if you make this a competition, everybody's going to try. And now they know that they're currently setting a new franchise record with 18. They're trying to build to that. So I think it is a sense of pride, but I completely agree. You have to be able to win on the road and at home. And that's something they just haven't been able to do this season with all of their losses coming on the road.
Yeah. I think it's more of a positive indication of what they could do in the playoffs, especially if things stand as they are now, looking at potentially home court throughout the playoffs, as long as they're in. And that's a really good indicator. But yeah, like you have to win on the road too. But and it's not like they're not. I think it's just the standard of like, oh, you're perfect at home, can make everything else seem just not I guess quaint in respect to that. But I again, it's not like they're necessarily struggling, but I mean, we've all been to TD Garden. Everybody there, they're all nuts. I don't know, is there any other arena you can think of that sort of stands up to that? Maybe like the Garden in
I would say New York? MSG in the playoffs. When I was out at San Francisco at the Chase Center, it was funny because like the area that we were in for press was like basically like being in the rafters at TD Garden. And so everybody, when I came home, was making a huge deal out of like, oh, the Chase Center was so loud. And I'm like, you guys, I think that was just the mics, directional mics towards the court. You know, when you see the guys walking around with the big plastic domes and stuff at football games, like whatever mics they have near the court and the crowd. Because I didn't think that I agree with you. Like even in a playoff atmosphere, I don't think that there's much that gets to the point where when you work at TD Garden, even if you're up towards the rafters as press, you will get a headache you know, whether it's Bruins or Celtics, you will get a headache if you're up there working without headphones or anything in. It's like, it's annoying. It's the building kind of shakes.
Yeah,
And
I've
so,
taken. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
there's
I've taken to wearing these when I'm there because yeah, it sucks.
so that's real. Let's move on to take flight, because I think we all want to bury the game that we saw in Milwaukee. We don't need to dwell on it. Let's move on to take flight. This is the segment of our podcast when we go through quicker hits around the NBA, some still focused on the Celtics, but looking at the league at large as well. And so the first one that we have to start with is a fan favorite, which is there real problems going on with the refs, or is this a bunch of babies? Is this tinfoil hat conspiracy artists, as you said, Esteban, in our pre-show document? And let's start off by hearing about Jaylen Brown, who held an interesting post-game press conference talking about the game against the Pacers, in which he believes that he was hit on the head and should have gotten a call there, or had the call stand, rather.
I think he obviously hit me in the head. I think we definitely need to do some investigation. That's all I'm going to say. I think that was the obvious one. Like, I never heard of head part of the ball. Doesn't make any sense to me. Then I asked him, when I've been asked, as they were like, did I get hit in the head? He looks me straight in the face, James, and he says, no, you didn't get hit in the head. And I'm like, okay. And then you come down and make, on the other end, like, that costs our team a game, and you expect us not to be frustrated. You know what I mean? We're trying to build good habits. We're trying to win as many games as possible, and we just dropped one because of that. You know? So I feel like we got the right to be upset, and the league should understand. You know, of course we're going to say something about it after the game. You know, so I don't think it should be any fines, but I definitely think that one should be investigated.
I agree with Jaylen, like, on the call. I think it was a bad call, and that we can go towards whether they should have been in that, the Celtics should have been in that position in the first place, because again, they had a terrible third quarter leading up to that. So you can talk about the basketball ramifications of that, but that aside, what do you guys think when you see somebody like, of course, LeBron James jumps in and wants to defend Jaylen Brown and talk about the call? Do you see something different with the refs recently, or a lack of consistency with the calls? Not just talking about that one in particular.
Before we get into, I guess, the broader issues that people may or may not have with refs, I do have to say the last 2-minute report was the funniest way it could have happened, where they said, okay, so the foul that everybody was mad at, that was definitely a foul. We're not going to take that back. But then the foul that Porzingis looked like he probably committed, that wasn't a foul. That was our bad. And then there was a secret third foul that was also against the Celtics that should have gone their way. Yeah, it's the funniest way it could have happened for all of that to play out the way it did. I don't know if there's a broader sense. I will say, looking across, this week has been bad for the refs. As we mentioned, LeBron sort of responded as well in support of Brown. Raptors head coach had his like 3-4 minute tirade against the refs when they played the Lakers, when it looked like I think the Lakers had like 23, 24 free throws in the fourth quarter alone. And he was upset about that. To the Celtics Pacers issue, I understand why they would be mad about those last few calls, but you missed 9 free throws in a 2-point game. I think they shot like 68% from the line that game. If you hit 4 free throws, we're not even having this conversation. And my general policy on refs is you can't put yourself in a position where an official can change the game. If you say it was a call, usually you go back and there was something else along the way that could have changed this outcome. So I understand why people would be frustrated, but also, as you said, Michael, like, the Celtics had a chance to win that game. And it wasn't just those last few calls that did it for them.
Not to mention they were without Tyrese Halliburton for the whole second half.
True.
That is a big, yeah, also that. I'll say this. there is something to this current setup of the way that the refs respond with their reports after the fact, and the way that the players are penalized to the extent that they talk about the refs. And you hear when Jaylen Brown's talking post game, like, I don't want to, he basically saying, like, I don't want to get fined for saying this, but he has a real problem with it. And The Athletic does this players poll every year where they survey NBA players. And back in April 2023, a quarter of the players surveyed last year named officiating as the league's biggest problem. And they cited what they felt was a lack of accountability and a lack of consistency. One anonymous player said, there's none. There's just not a system set up for it. It's been really shaky, just something to keep them accountable. I don't know if I want to take their money, but something to have them have some type of, I can't F this up mentality is what one anonymous player said. And it's true. It's like, I don't know if the answer is, okay, we're going to fine refs when they make a bad call, because some of it truly is human nature. It's not like I don't think at this point with the NBA, I know it has a sketchy history from our childhoods about officiating. I don't think that there's malicious intent in missing these calls or maybe calling the game a certain way, but you certainly want there to be a consistency, especially when you get to the playoffs, in understanding what's acceptable in the flow of the game. And on top of that, if the players are going to have accountability to the point where players and coaches rather can't really talk about the officiating to a certain extent after a game, then I think that there should be some kind of accountability for the refs as well. And maybe that's a grading system.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a system, and the part of your grade that you receive determines the different crews that you're allowed to be on. I don't know. This could get very political, but I do think
umpire
that
scorecards.
Exactly. So I do think that there's a certain there's room for growth is what I would say, aside from just being like, terrible call, you blew it.
Right. Or like the idea that like, oh, games are rigged, or it's like if games, like, why would the Celtics lose to the Pacers? Like why would that be a rigged game? You know what I mean?
I'm still trying to figure out why the Pacers seem to be on every other night against the Bucks and the Celtics. So I don't know.
That's true. But you do bring up a really interesting point, and it's like when you sit and think about it, like, the refs have a stranger position than I think they've ever had in the league, where you have like guys like Scott Foster who are household names as officials, which I don't know if we've ever had before in the league. And I don't know if the NBA is just like upfront enough with that, where it's like people pay attention, they know who these people are more than we ever have. They obviously play a huge part in the game, not in a way that you always want, but I think you're right. Like, there has to be a way to draw accountability to them. You need to be able to have a constructive back and forth between the teams and the officials, without it getting to the point where now, like, parents of little league kids think it's okay to yell at 15-year-old refs, because I think that does trickle down.
As somebody who's a ref in high school, I can say that's nothing new. But right. I do think that you bring up an interesting point about Boris being kind of sorry, I am mixing up my names here, but about refs being
Scott Foster.
Kind of, I was thinking of Scott Boras from
you're
somehow
good.
my MLB brain jumped in. Foster being a household name for most who are not deep in the agent workings of the MLB. I think that it also is only going to get more intense with the gambling markets going the way that they are. If you start to think that, hey, they're not hitting the over because the refs are not making the right calls and getting the team to the line, like, then it's people thinking that you're playing with their money. And that starts getting really complicated, especially when the leagues are trying so hard to have a separation of church and state with the gambling companies who are also advertising every other commercial break on all their channels.
No, it's true. It's a complicated relationship to say the least. Turp, how do you? I mean, is there a way forward that you think there can be? Because I don't necessarily think the refs are bad overall. It's just when stuff like this happens, everybody pays attention. Is there a way to constructively build on this relationship?
I don't know if there necessarily is, because I don't know if you can find them, right? I'm not a referee expert. I don't know what their average salary is, but I can't tell you it's that, like, I can't believe it's that high. Also, like, the one thing they have to do when they do make a mistake is maybe a pool report, and it doesn't even really happen. That's in a closed room and it's all in written form. So is it really that bad? Like, when you have to just explain the mistake you made in a written form, that it's really not that bad. But there has to be some accountability, because especially when you start bringing this gambling thing, it's like that changes the game a lot. Like, everyone's going to instantly think that someone's messing with their money. I think that's just human nature. Like, everyone's money driven. Everyone cares about their money. And I think when you start to bring that factor in, it really does change things a lot. So they have to find a way to find a balance there. And I don't know what exactly it would be, but that's on the league. They have to find that out, because some of these calls and some of these rants are kind of getting out of hand. It's kind of taken away from the product a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the bigger issue, I don't know if the bigger issue, but the issue overall, I think, is not even with like bad calls, but like when you want to find officials who can manage the flow of the game without getting in the way of that flow, which is very difficult to do. And I think we saw a little bit of that even last night. All of this being said, I don't want to be an official. That seems like one of the hardest jobs in the world. I don't know which one scares me more, the thought of being an NFL official or an NBA official.
Well, the NBA officials have to wear those deeply unflattering shirts, so I think I'm more scared by that.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. But though, I mean, it's an almost impossible job for them to do, and they have to stand up on a night-to-night basis against the best players in the world and tell them, no, you're wrong. Not to mention all the fans watching at home, potentially putting money on these games. Yeah, I have a deep amount of respect for what they do. At the same time, the league can do more, I think, always to make this a better experience for everyone.
There's room for improvement. Let's move on to our second take, because we could probably talk about refs for the next 30 minutes, but there's other podcasts for that. NBA All-Star voting. The second round of returns are in. And when you look at the Eastern Conference right now, you have actually all 5 Celtics players are named on this ballot. So this is the long list of ballots. You have Jason Tatum getting the most votes with 2.9 million. And then you get down to Jaylen Brown, Kristaps Porzingis, and then you have both guards, Derek White, and even Drew Holiday coming in with 312,000 votes. What do you guys make of this? What do you think is the likelihood of, where's the cutoff of how many Celtics you think right now will be appearing at All-Star Weekend?
Yeah. I guess first, do we all agree that Tatum and Brown are going again? Because I think that seems like that's going to happen, right? So,
and to be clear, this is fan voting.
Right. So I think the early returns are on the money for Tatum and Brown. Personally, just looking at the lists so far and where people are, that's my cutoff for the Celtics, just because I think there's so much other talent I want to see in that game. But I'm interested to hear what y'all think.
When you consider the front court, I think Kristaps Porzingis can slide in there too. I think the one thing that would hurt him is how many games he's missed. But when he's on the floor, he's one of the most fun players to watch, and easy for us to say. But I think you're kind of seeing that now on a national level. The Celtics have had a lot of national attention, and you're seeing how good of a player he really is. And he's only been an All-Star once, so I would like to see him get in too, and I think he has a real shot.
So it's interesting looking at this fan voting, because where Porzingis slides in is he's right behind Brown, and he basically has somewhere around, I'm not a mathematician, but like close to half as many votes as Brown, slightly more than half, maybe like closer to 2/3 as many votes. And Bam is right behind him. And I look at it and I go, I wonder how many people are looking at the front court voting and going like, well, we need some bigs in there. And here are the bigs whose names I know in the Eastern Conference. And Kristaps Porzingis, if you follow the narrative of him right now, is, you know, he was obviously a unicorn coming into the league when he was with the Knicks, a giant name back then, and then disappeared in Dallas, had a quietly great season with the Wizards, but really only got a ton of attention about how great his season was with the Wizards when he gets traded to the Celtics. And now he does appear to be, I think by most people following the league, a delicate X factor for the Celtics. And so it to me is about, okay, how much playing time is he getting leading up to voting? How many statement performances will he have? And can he show himself to be a really dependable guy who's a big enough piece of this Celtics team that's not just Jalen and Jason? But I really feel like right now that's kind of, it's like a 60-40 split to me as to whether or not he's going to be there.
Yeah, and my only issue, because I think in the first return of voting, Bam had he had more votes than Kristaps, and I think Bam should be an All-Star. He's having a better season right now than he did last year when he was an All-Star. When you think about, you know, true bigs in the East, it's probably Giannis, Embiid, and then Bam. If we're just speaking honestly. So I would put him above Kristaps just because of what he's producing for his team, and just being sort of him and Jimmy Butler being sort of the centerpieces of that team. So that's where it's hard for me. And, you know, I know there's been this conversation about, oh, White should be an All-Star. It's interesting to me that that same momentum hasn't carried for Porzingis, because if there's a third Celtic who's an All-Star, I think to your point, Justin, it should be Porzingis, because of everything we just talked about. But this is the problem with the game, is that there's so much talent, you can't include everyone, you know, and somebody's going to have to lose out on this.
And shout out the Celtics. They are pushing this movement to get all 5 of them there. Last Friday, the PR team gave us like gift boxes with like instant, like trying to get us to post stuff. They gave us a t-shirt.
What was in there?
It was like a t-shirt. It was like one of those, it was like a magnet license plate that said Indy 5, trying to get all 5 there. There was a Dunkin' Donuts gift card. It was a ton of stuff. It was great. It was very generous for them.
You don't have an All-Star vote, do you? Are they're trying to bribe you?
They're pushing the fan voting. So they were trying to get us to share it and push the fan voting. So they're really trying.
Bribery. I'm going to have to talk to Christian Meg over there about this.
Christian knows what he's doing. He wants all 5 represented. It's a great job.
I don't know if that's in the rule book.
They're just trying harder. Well, if you're not cheating, you ain't trying. So good for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to ask who. I know we're still early on this. Who do y'all think is going to be at least the starting 5 for the East in the All-Star?
I'll let you go first, Turp.
I think Tatum and Brown will both be in there. Embiid, Giannis. Well, no, because it has to be 2. So it'd be Halliburton, Trae Young, Embiid,
Trae Young,
Giannis, Tatum. Yeah, because I'm thinking Trae Young's the second, and he's got a couple more. He's barely ahead of Dame, but I think Trae Young will get in. Just
he's also one of the most interesting people to deal with, because I think there's like the 3 people who are probably like on like one of them has to go for me. It's Trae Young, Jimmy Butler, Paolo Banchero. And I think all of them should get in. And I'm really kind of upset that Paolo Banchero doesn't have as many votes as I think he should have, just for what he's doing for Orlando and making them really they're a playoff contender, a breakout team. And what he's doing should be worthy of recognition. The Trae Young part is fascinating to me, but I think the 5 I'm thinking just in my head, probably Dame, Halliburton, Tatum, Giannis, Embiid for the East at least.
Yeah, I think I still put Giannis above Embiid. I don't know how the overall voting will go in that way, but even just it may be recency bias coming off of Giannis last night. Like, can we just have a quick aside?
Yeah.
For Giannis's brother and the
Nonsense.
fury that he started on Twitter with his horrible appearance in the Celtics game last night. And I got people on Twitter being like, it's disgusting that Giannis's brother has a spot on this roster for all the NBA, players in the G League players trying to get a roster spot.
Yeah.
This is disgusting. He's the
I feel
highest
like he
paid
does nothing
cheerleader
but
in the league.
cause problems too. Like when he's on the sideline, he's always causing problems. And then he gets in, he's like a bull in a china shop, just following everybody.
That's what you want from that kind of player, though, right? He's it feels like a lot of teams need that sort of guy who's like, you know what? I don't care what my stats are. I'm just gonna
He's a goon.
mess things up. Yeah.
He's a
I'm just gonna mess
basketball
things up.
version of a goon.
Yeah.
We don't have a lot of those in the NBA is the thing. And he only exists because of his brother.
Yeah. If he was a Celtic, the Celtics fans would love him. So I'll just
He'd be the next Taco.
Yeah.
If he was a Celtic.
100%.
God bless Taco. You know what? Let's wrap up with this one. As we said to start the pod, we're all a little punch drunk over here because we found out Bill Belichick had the weirdest press conference ever yesterday. Although he wore a very nice jacket and is out with the New England Patriots. And so you posed this question, Esteban. What is the NBA equivalent of Belichick leaving the Patriots that you can think of in the NBA? So is this like based in your question? Is this based in reality of like something we've seen play out or what you think would be a situation to play out, like a hypothetical?
I was thinking more which sort of coach in the NBA has had that sort of same impact. Which NBA coach is the closest NBA parallel to Belichick? And I think I was thinking about it, and the obvious names that come up are probably like Popovich or Phil Jackson. I think it may be Pat Riley.
That's exactly what I was gonna say.
Yeah, just like no matter where he was, like an aura of like extreme accountability. Just whether it was the Heat or the Knicks or the Lakers, just incredibly tough teams, physically tough teams. He dressed better than Belichick. But just
true hatred for others in the league too.
Yeah,
like
and nobody liked him.
No, like not made up feuds. Like he truly hates other people who he has competed against or he has a backstory with. Like it's true, can't stand this guy.
Yeah, and then maybe even like the second guy I was thinking of was even going back even further. Maybe Red Auerbach, just in terms of having that much control over a single franchise. I don't know. What do y'all think?
The Red one is a great one. I saw Dan Shaughnessy of the Boston Globe wrote a column on that saying that those two are kind of one of one, which I haven't got a chance to read yet, but I always enjoyed Shaughnessy, so I got to give that a read. To me, Pat Riley was the one that immediately jumped out, and it's because of a sense of culture. There's so much dumb debating that happens around Belichick's career. How much of it was Brady? How much of it was Belichick? Or the first three trophies, Belichick trophies, and the last three Lombardis are Brady's. I think what Belichick did, though, was establish a certain culture here for a long time, and then it kind of ran its course. And you can talk about all the issues with the personnel and his job as a GM, and that's for a football podcast. But I think when you look at what Pat Riley does, like, I have a habit of mocking the Heat culture thing, but wherever Pat Riley goes, like that culture, the Heat culture and the Patriot way are like very similar. I mean, they have different sensibilities, but the strength of culture comes from the top. And with both of those guys, I think that's really, really difficult to replicate or build. And that's the most one-to-one comparison that I can find, even though everybody looks at Popovich as a coach and how he comports himself in press conferences. I look at Pat Riley.
Yeah, Justin, you were at the game, right? I was in the press box, but you were out there in the stands for Belichick.
Oh yeah, I had to go. If it was Bill's last time, I had to be there. That's my whole childhood. I couldn't miss it. I couldn't miss it.
Yeah. So who do you think is the NBA parallel?
I'm with Meghan on that one. I think Pat Riley's the perfect one, and I think this close second would be Greg Popovich. Like you said, how he conducts himself in the press conferences, even the 5 championships with the Spurs, same thing as Belichick with the Pats. It's like there's an interesting parallel there, but Pat Riley's the one. I mean, that I love the comparison between the Heat culture and the Patriot way. I think that's right on. And yeah, I think the close second would be Greg Popovich. And maybe if you want to look at it more of like a somber tone, like even Popovich fading out at the end, just like Bill did, right? Talent kind of leaves him. And now things are kind of outdated. And he also runs the personnel decisions in San Antonio. So I look at it like Popovich would be a close second, but Pat Riley is right on the money.
All right. Well, unfortunately, we've run out of time, so we can't talk about Ime Udoka coming back to Boston. But maybe it's a blessing in disguise. Ime Udoka will be back in Boston on Saturday with the Houston Rockets. So we're going to have to talk about that next week, what kind of reception he gets. I think he's going to get a very warm one from the players who played under him because they adore that guy. But thank you for joining us on Slammed, a Boston Celtics podcast, which of course you can find on our Odyssey app and anywhere else that you get your podcasts. Guys, you take care this weekend. Hopefully you can get some sleep after you report everything developing with the Patriots. Hopefully there's no news tomorrow and Saturday and everybody can chill.
Please.